On today's show, analyzing the latest from Steve Ballmer, Kawhi Leonard allegations. CEO Andrei Cherny and Pablo Torre and Mark Cuban go back and forth. Going to be breaking down their tweets and comments on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, been a Clipper fan for 20 years, been covering the team for 5 on my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and 3 right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell on the road to 8,000 subscribers, and you can listen wherever you get your podcast. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Clipper Nation, continuing covering this saga of the investigation and the allegations against our LA Clippers and Steve Ballmer and Kawhi Leonard. We're going to be breaking down the back and forths between Andrei Cherny, the ex-CEO of Aspiration, Mark Cuban, and Pablo Torre's back and forths, and just kind of analyzing it. I just feel as though this is the hottest story in the NBA right now. And if I'm not reporting the news as the host of Locked On Clippers, then what am I doing? So before we get into that, I just want to preface again by saying I'm not a crazy finance guy. I wasn't a business major. I was a journalism major. So if I don't sound extremely confident about everything I'm saying, I'm more so reporting the news. So take that with a grain of salt. Correct me in the comments if anything. But I appreciate all the support lately and all the views that are coming because of this, even though if it's not necessarily for the right reason. So let's begin by talking about Andrei Cherny coming out and speaking. Okay, if you haven't listened to the last 2 episodes, go check those out. One of them was me kind of talking about the Dennis Wong piece of evidence that made us look suspicious, where he put in $1.99 million, then Kawhi got his $1.75 million when Aspiration was late to pay Kawhi. And then the previous episode I had on a fan that seems to have a rebuttal for everything. So I was like, you know what? Let me just kind of play devil's advocate with him and see if he can rebuttal all my points. Obviously, in the comment section, nobody was really taking our side. But right now, it's really Clippers against the world right now. Everybody wants us to get hit with a penalty, especially Laker fans and bitter fans in the comments, Raptors fans, whoever it may be. But let's talk about Andrei Cherny, right? So for those that don't know, Andrei Cherny he co-founded Aspiration with Joseph Sanberg. Cherny left his position, though, as CEO in 2022 after a deal to go public as a special purpose acquisition company, SPAC, at a $2.3 billion valuation fell through. So he left. He's gone. He did not go to jail, right? But he spoke out recently and tweeted and said, quote, "With the many hot takes in the past 10 days about the Clippers / Kawhi Leonard, it's been surprising, though maybe it shouldn't be, that until now, no reporter has bothered to reach out to me for the facts about that contract. This is what I told the New York Times / Athletic today." So before we read the statement that he posted in the Athletic article, he said, no reporter has bothered to reach out to me about the facts. That will later be rebutted by Pablo Torre. But this is what Andrei Cherny said. He said, "The claim that the contract with Kawhi Leonard was a no-show contract is false. The contract contained 3 pages of extensive obligations that Leonard had to perform. And the contract clearly said that if Leonard did not meet those obligations, Aspiration could terminate the contract. The beliefs provision is not unusual in celebrity endorsements and merely means we can't do something like make a vegetarian eat meat as a way of forcing them to break the contract. It doesn't mean you can have a belief of not talking to a camera. In the months of discussion among our executives before signing the sponsorship, I don't remember conversations about the NBA salary cap. I signed the contract shortly before I submitted my resignation, but before I left, there were numerous internal conversations about the various things Aspiration was planning to do with Leonard once the 2022-23 season began, including emails from the marketing team about their plans in just the week before my last day. I can't speak to what was done or not done after I left or why. Joe Sanberg is now pleading guilty to criminal acts that were among the reasons that I decided to resign from Aspiration in 2022 and that the company eventually went bankrupt. Those now calling our company a fraud are blaming the victims. Along with all our customers and investors, it is those of us who worked at Aspiration and gave years of our lives to its mission who were hurt most by what Sanberg did. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? Now it's just me talking for those on audio. Now it's just me talking. So let's unpack that, right? First, he claims that the no-show contract is false, that there were obligations that Kawhi had to perform. Now, of course, Pablo Torre showed us some of those points on his podcast, and they had an out in every single statement, like if it doesn't align with his beliefs upon request, and he clarified the belief part. So essentially, he's saying that Kawhi did have things that he had to do. He did have things that he had to do. But he's essentially saying, I don't remember. So he's saying, I don't remember conversations about the salary cap, and he signed the contract shortly before he resigned. So essentially, everything that happened with him not, advertising or promoting Aspiration had nothing to do with me. Which again, if you check out when Andrei Cherny actually left Aspiration, that is true. So he's basically saying Sanberg is the fraud. I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. He is part, like him being fraudulent, him being a crook is why I got out of there and we were hurt by Sanberg. So he's essentially saying I had nothing to do with this. The contract was a real thing. Like the agreement was a real thing. Now, the only part that's suspect about that to me is that, okay, if Kawhi did have obligations that he had to do, why didn't he do them? Although there were those outs in the contract. So who's enforcing these? We don't know. There's a lot of gray areas, and that's where it really comes down to Kawhi, Uncle Dennis, and what's his name? And Sanberg. Unless, of course, you believe Pablo Torre 100% and say that, well, the reason why he wasn't doing it is because it was fraudulent and Ballmer was using it to circumvent the salary cap and all that, of course. So I'm not taking a side here. Of course, I'm a Clipper fan, so until we get fully proven guilty, I'm not going to say we're guilty. But of course, I do acknowledge that the evidence and everything that's been presented against us looks fishy. Now, so that's Andrei Cherny talking, right? That was his second to last tweet. Now we go to the response from Pablo Torre saying, "Hi, Andrei. Your tweet is obviously false. At Pablo Finds Out requested an on-camera interview with you via LinkedIn. We then emailed you a series of detailed questions. You told me they got lost in your spam filter. Also, this is you, right?" And he posted a picture of Andrei Cherny, an article from AZ Central saying that federal investigators are now looking into the activities of an Arizona congressional candidate who until recently ran a business hawking carbon credits to people and corporations looking to polish their environmental credentials. So essentially that federal investigators are looking into the activities of him, essentially saying Sanberg's not the only one that's being questioned for fraudulent activity. So he posted that, right? Pablo Torre is saying that they requested an on-camera interview because he claimed in his podcast that we tried to talk and reach out to Andrei Cherny and he did not reply. In the comments, Andrei Cherny replies to him and says, Pablo is right on this. By past 10 days, I meant since his podcast. I originally wrote it that way, but it was too many characters. As for his screenshot, it was bad reporting at the time. He's referring to the article I just talked about. As I said then, and the DOJ, Department of Justice, charges make clear what happened and who the fraudster was. So now it's me talking again. In that tweet, he posts a picture of the DM sent by Pablo Torre on LinkedIn saying, Hey, Andrei, great to connect with you here. I would love to have a conversation with you on my podcast about Project 2029 and the intersection of politics, climate change, and sports. Would you be available to join me via Zoom or by phone sometime this week? Thanks, Pablo. That message was sent on August 24th, according to the DM that Andrei Cherny posted. Here's the part that's very suspicious, though, and doesn't look good for Cherny and looks good for Torre. And, of course, if Torre looks good, that means the Clippers look bad. Essentially, to say he wasn't contacted, yet he was, that is strange because the proof is that he was. So is he lying? He's essentially backpedaling. He said too many characters in his tweet, yet he's verified, which means that there's no tweet limit, like character limit. There's no character limit to tweets when you're verified. And then somebody that I follow, actually, that follows me back, said, you have a blue check. You were not even close to the character limit. And then Cherny says, nope, you only get that if you pay for the blue check, not if Twitter verifies you on their own, which, again, is nonsense because now you have to pay for the blue check. That's why a lot of celebrities don't even have a blue check anymore. So Cherny looks completely fraudulent in this exchange. So my takeaway here is this did not look good for anybody advocating for us because Andrei Cherny got caught for lying about being hit up or not being hit up, and then he's talking about character limits. So I got to give that one to Pablo Torre, unfortunately. But coming up, going to talk more about Mark Cuban and his response and the ongoing saga with all of this. I got to tell you a little something about 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. I mean, you've all seen the 5-Hour Energy commercials. Very easy to just pick up and go. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very easy. So with 5-Hour Energy, you can replace your energy drinks or anything of that nature. And it's very, very portable. So you can get it on the go and use it you can get it in a very quick fashion, essentially. So that's the deal with 5-Hour Energy. My favorite flavor, probably orange, I'd say. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. That's 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in-store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. All right, back talking about our scandal or investigation or allegations. So Pablo Torre then posts a tweet on Saturday, I believe, saying, "Greetings." In response to Aspiration co-founder Andrei Cherny, who now claims that Kawhi Leonard's secret $28 million endorsement deal was not a no-show job, at Pablo Finds Out has just obtained the following statement. It is signed by Aspiration's ex-CFO, ex-COO, and CLO, and ex-CTO. And the statement reads, and it's titled Joint Statement of Aspiration's Senior Executive Team, so I'm guessing he just obtained this recently. At the time of the KL2 Aspire LLC endorsement arrangement with Kawhi Leonard, we served as Aspiration's Chief Legal Officer, Chief Technology Officer, and Chief Financial Officer, reporting directly to then CEO Andrei Cherny. The Leonard deal was presented to the company as a completed arrangement and executed by Mr. Cherny despite significant objections from members of the senior management team. It did not reflect any strategy previously communicated to us, nor was it reviewed through Aspiration's investment committee process. For comparison, a transaction of similar size, $29.5 million, in the same period was subject to that review as described in the federal court decision in Zero Carbon Holdings LLC and 413 LLC versus Aspiration Partners, Inc. The team expressed concerns at the time regarding the high cost of the agreement and its lack of alignment with Aspiration's brand and business strategy. While subsequent marketing efforts were undertaken, they were ultimately discontinued and should not be interpreted as support for the deal itself. In our judgment, the Leonard deal was not in the company's best interest. It was strategically difficult to justify then, and it remains so today. And it's signed by former Chief Financial Officer of Aspiration, former Chief Operating Officer and Chief Legal Officer, and Chief Technological Officer. So a lot to unpack there as well. So the statement essentially says these guys were present for this deal, or in the company for this deal. And it says executed by Mr. Cherny despite significant objections from members of this senior management team. So essentially Cherny's pushing this. We don't like it. We don't think it makes sense, right? It did not reflect any strategy. Basically, it doesn't align with what we're wanting to do. I mean, Kawhi Leonard getting paid more than these guys. Is he going to actually promote the damn thing? It's a lot of money. It's more money than we're paying everybody else. And they're saying marketing efforts were undertaken. They were ultimately discontinued, so it ended up going through. So essentially, Kawhi Leonard's deal was a real deal, though, through Aspiration. You know what I'm saying? It was something where they were going to pay him this amount of money. It's just the why. Why are they paying him to do nothing? But essentially, according to Cherny, he wasn't paid to do nothing. So it says, in our judgment, the Leonard deal was not in the company's best interest. It was strategically difficult to justify. So it doesn't matter if it was strategically difficult to justify, in my opinion, at least. It happened. It happened. You're still not giving me a link towards Ballmer's money going directly to Kawhi. Just because some of these guys think that it doesn't align with their business strategies doesn't mean that the actual people in charge didn't believe that it aligned with their business strategies, right? If Cherny, who's the CEO, and Sanberg are doing this, then these guys' opinions don't matter. It's a matter of showing that we are circumventing the salary cap. And again, I'm going to have to repeat for the millionth time because people keep forgetting when I say this, but I know that the NBA doesn't need hardcore evidence and can ding us on circumstantial evidence. But I'm going off of what Adam Silver, said, which was, we don't want to just ding them. I'm paraphrasing. We don't want to just ding them on suspicion of impropriety. We want to see if there was impropriety. So essentially, we want hardcore evidence if we're going to sanction them or take away draft pick or void contracts and all that stuff, which I don't even know how that's going to happen. But all I'm saying is that matters. So Pablo Torre posting that essentially was to show that people within Aspiration thought that the Kawhi thing just didn't make sense. And he's using that to say it doesn't make sense because the only reason it's happening is because they're using it, Ballmer, to circumvent the salary cap. Now, Andrei Cherny replied to that and said, "Hi, Pablo Torre. I suspect that social media is not the best place to hash this all out and don't remember an Aspiration investment committee, but nothing in this statement conflicts with what I wrote yesterday." And again, that is true, right? It doesn't conflict with what Andrei Cherny said because he said that the deal was happening and that there actually was stipulations in the contract. Nothing that these people said anything about what Kawhi Leonard needed to do. And then Pablo responds with, "Good evening. You don't remember a lot about what happened at Aspiration, it seems, but I strongly recommend the opinion of Louis J. Lyman in the Southern District of New York in the federal case that was explicitly cited in the statement I posted, because he does. And it's a screenshot saying, or a picture saying in a document, the first phase of negotiations. The first phase of negotiations began in mid-January 22. And this is not, I don't even know if this is necessarily about Kawhi's deal, and lasted until approximately February 1st, 2022, when Aspiration's investment committee rejected a proposed transaction. So the point of that whole picture and that tweet was, he's saying that there was no such thing as an investment committee. Pablo saying, well, I have proof that there was. So again, I have to give Pablo a point there and say that Cherny looks bad. Because if he's saying there's no investment committee, yet Pablo's pulling up screenshots from a document that says there was, that does not look good for Cherny at the end of the day. And then Mark Cuban gets involved. So coming up, we're going to be talking about what Mark Cuban said, because he's been the Clippers' biggest defender in all of this. Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. And right now, the NFL season is 2 weeks in. We just got done with week 2. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Both LA teams right now are 2-0. How about that? Right now, the Baltimore Ravens are the favorites to win the Super Bowl on FanDuel at plus 500 odds. The Buffalo Bills are plus 600 in second place. The Green Bay Packers are up to third place, tied with the Philadelphia Eagles at plus 700. And then in fifth place, you got the Chiefs at plus 1,300. The Lions in sixth place after that crazy scoring game they had on Sunday at plus 1,600. And then guess who's seventh, eighth, and ninth? Chargers, Rams, and Niners in that order. Wow, Chargers above the Rams. Interesting. But anyway, that's great to see if you're an LA sports fan, not if you're a Raiders fan or a Saints fan or a Panthers fan or whatever. But anyway, you can go to FanDuel. I would say bet on the Super Bowl odds for the Rams right now. Why not? They're looking pretty good. Also, the Eagles at plus 700. I think you might get good value there if you think they're going to go back-to-back. I don't know. Or even the Chiefs. It's a good time to bet on FanDuel for the NFL. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, so now talking about Mark Cuban entering the discussion. On September 13th, which again was Saturday, he goes, "Did the Athletic get it wrong?" And then he quotes, this is the quote, "I am personally contributing stock to Kawhi to make this partnership possible," Sanberg wrote members of his leadership team in a May 2022 email obtained by The Athletic. Aspiration CEO judged the deal to be not worth doing. For avoidance of doubt, any and all benefit to Aspiration from the Kawhi deal is being subsidized by my contributing my equity to make this happen. So I'm not going to lie, I'm a little confused at that, just because when it says Aspiration CEO judged the deal to be not worth doing, but Sanberg is saying that I'm personally contributing stock to Kawhi to make this possible, I'm a little confused there, because Cherny is saying that there was a deal, although maybe Cherny is saying he was against it. You know, we don't know that. He hasn't really said if he was against it or for it. He just said that it happened. So Cuban expands. So again, Cuban's been questioning the reporting from the start, because he says that frauds happen. He knows how this works. Again, at the end of the day, people are saying that Mark Cuban is not an honest source because he could be just defending his own ass. He's got dirt that he doesn't want people finding out, people looking into him. But obviously, everybody is going to side with Pablo Torre because they want to see the Clippers lose and they want to see the Clippers fail. But anyway, Cuban expands by saying, "And this SEC filing is worth reading. Everyone got scammed by Sanberg. The CFO tried to fight it and couldn't. I'm sure the CTO and CLO did as well. Sanberg told the CEO he hoped he would die, and Sanberg kept lying and lying. He scammed everyone in the company, controlled the board to the point of paying someone $12.3 million and putting him on the board so he could cover up everything. He wouldn't let anyone, including the executives, see his round-trip letters of intent that were a complete fraud, and he invented a metric, EBITDA, that was a EBITDA plus marketing expenses to try to show a profit, which was laughable. Nothing in the company was real except the hopes and dreams of the people who worked there because they believed in the cause, and the hopes by investors that Sanberg would deliver on his promises that none of them knew were fraudulent. All of this is public knowledge, but the one thing you don't have, and he's referring to Torre, is anything between Sanberg and the Clippers showing collusion. So, and then he shares a document that's, essentially the litigation files, in the United States District Court, Central District of California, the complaint, demand for jury trial, plaintiff versus Joseph Neil Sanberg. So all the charges against him and all that stuff, essentially saying that he's a fraud. So Mark Cuban's point is Sanberg is a fraud. He scammed everyone. So why are we going with Ballmer as the bad guy and not Sanberg? That is Mark Cuban's overall point. Until you prove that there's collusion, Sanberg is the bad guy and Ballmer hasn't done anything wrong. So then, obviously, he got some pushback in the comments. Someone said, so you acknowledge that Sanberg was scamming from day one. Why would a scammer who was trying to extract as much money as possible willingly give Kawhi Leonard $28 million plus own equity plus beg for money to continue paying Kawhi? And Mark Cuban says because he thought it would help with the scam. Because, again, he's trying to make it look, a scammer is trying to make it look like he's not scamming, right? So that's Mark Cuban's point there. And then someone said, Mark, why are you being so glib about this? It's interesting. It's very odd that you're going in this direction. But it is funny, however, you're getting cooked by everybody because everyone's liking more comments against Mark and replying to him saying, give it up, man. Like, it's crazy how everyone's against us in this. I'm happy you have an answer for everything that comes out. Congratulations. Hope it helps your billionaire buddy out. And, of course, it's a Laker fan talking to him. And then Mark says, it's fascinating to me. I've been scammed, dealt with scammers, put one in jail. I know how these work, and I know how the business transactions work. This is Madoff 101. Hide everything from everyone, lie to keep the money coming in. Like with Madoff, everyone working there thought things were great until the indictments came in. The folks Pablo has talked to are as much victims as Ballmer in this. I think they had any idea they would have turned him into the feds, which would, of course, stopped Ballmer from investing. So Mark Cuban, I mean, he's falling on the sword for us here. So shout out to Mark Cuban. Again, another comment says, Mark, why did they give Kawhi that contract and not even announce it? And Cuban says, you have to ask Joe Sanberg. Read my other post. He said the CEO disagreed with it. And the CEO said the marketing people disagreed with it. So only one guy, the biggest shareholders, seemed to want him. And he gave him his own stocks. You have to ask him. So essentially, Mark Cuban saying, until you talk to Sanberg, all this stuff, all these people you're talking to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't get to the bottom of it. And one person said, I asked him. He told me it was for cap circumventions. That was funny. But so Mark Cuban is going all out in this. All out. So, of course, Pablo Torre responds and says, you've spent hours of my life telling me that I've been effectively duped by Aspiration co-founder Joe Sanberg, who pled guilty to wire fraud, and now you're asking me whether we should trust an email written by Joe Sanberg. Good talk. So Torre is saying, you're saying that Joe Sanberg is a fraud, right? And now you're saying I should trust an email written by him? That's what Torre is saying. It's, kind of contradictory. So then Mark Cuban goes, the one he sent to his staff long before he was indicted. And so he's saying when he was innocent, he was sending these. So those emails would be more telling. He said the one he sent to his staff long before he was indicted and even before he defaulted on his loan, that email. But you do want to believe the people who said they were told by some unknown person with no emails that they knew this was a salary cap violation because they were told so. I'm having fun. Are you? So again, Cuban is essentially saying these people that are saying that it was to circumvent the salary cap, what's their proof of that? How do we know who they are? Were they in tight with Sanberg? Are they trying to... we don't know we just know that they're workers that work for Aspiration. We don't know. And just because they're anonymous workers, again, they're staying anonymous. They don't, They're not coming out on the record saying who they are. We don't know if they were tight with Sanberg. We don't know what their motives are or what their affiliations were. They said, I was in the financial department, I was in this and that. So someone replied to, but I think that's a fair point though. You know, who are these people? Just because they're Pablo's sources, we're supposed to take them to the bank? I mean, I think it's worth questioning a little bit. Now, a comment responds saying, but what was the benefit to Aspiration from the Kawhi deal that Sanberg referred to in that email? They never used him in any marketing campaign. He made no public appearances on behalf of Aspiration. No one even knew he had endorsed the company. So what was the benefit? And Mark said, everyone in the company certainly knew, which was true. We know that. But Kawhi Leonard started getting paid in April of 2022. In October of 2022, they changed CEOs and they changed their business model from a consumer-driven bank to a B2B company selling carbon credits and more. They actually sold 350 million tons to Meta. In fact, just a little more than a year after this switch, they sold off Aspiration Bank and changed their name. But again, Sanberg made the call on Kawhi Leonard. He is the only one who knows along with Kawhi Leonard management. But let me ask you a question. If you were a scam artist like Sanberg and you know you committed hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud and were facing decades in jail and you had this little factoid, you knew that the Kawhi Leonard deal was with an NBA owner to circumvent the salary cap, something that would be reputation and franchise shattering to that owner and team. The CFTC, SEC, and Department of Justice come knocking on your door. What do you do with that information? So that's a lot of jargon that I need to slow down and read and need explained to me like I'm 5, to be honest. The part where it's obvious is everyone in the company certainly knew. But the thing is, Mark Cuban is essentially questioning those sources to some degree. The guys that are coming on Pablo Torre's podcast saying it was salary cap circumvention. They're saying that, but we still have no link besides them talking. And they're staying anonymous in all this. So we don't know. We truly don't. I mean, we're assuming that they got scammed too. They thought the company was real. They thought they was, not acting like this, that Sanberg wasn't doing all this stuff. So I would assume that they're not happy with Sanberg. They don't like the guy because he's a fraud. He's a crook. But I don't know. What if they were cool with Sanberg and they were getting paid with him? We don't know. And they want to make Ballmer look bad. I don't know. So somebody comments to Cuban and says, besides your point being meaningless to the discussion of whether any cap evasion took place, which is true. He said, you're factually incorrect. Their largest reported business was already the carbon credit biz in 2021, sold carbon credits in 2021. These are the shell letters of intent that Sanberg set up. And Cuban said, like I said in another post, they switched their business model to be exclusively B2C. And there has not been a single fact connecting anyone to the cap, just lots of conjecture. Which is true at the end of the day. But again, people are saying that conjecture is enough to ding the Clippers. So someone else said, circumventing the salary cap isn't a crime. The reason I would keep silent is 3 reasons. 1, I'm getting paid. 2, there's worse things that, and this person that's commenting to Cuban is talking about from Sanberg's perspective, said, the reason I would keep silent is 3 reasons. 1, I'm getting paid. 2, there's worse things that I've done that Steve knows about, so let me keep silent and help him out. 3, my life is being threatened by someone in Steve's camp. So essentially, this person is suggesting that Steve Ballmer knew about the fraudulence and was essentially in on it with him, which I completely think there's no way. I don't think that there's any chance. I think Ballmer did get scammed. Whether or not he did this, used Aspiration to circumvent the salary cap for Kawhi, that remains to be seen and proven. Mark Cuban asked, who is paying him? He had to give up everything and declare all his assets and income to the feds. Someone else replied, the Department of Justice doesn't care about nor would make a deal regarding NBA cap circumvention information. And then Mark said, of course they don't. So what would you do with that information? Just keep it to yourself, not say a word, and just go to jail? Or essentially, I think Mark Cuban's saying he would try to make Steve Ballmer look bad as well in all this. So anyway, there's a lot there. And he keeps on going. Mark Cuban. He says, here's the crazy thing, Pablo Torre. The crook says the CEO didn't want the Kawhi Leonard deal. The CEO says there were months of discussion with executives and your 3 guys confirmed they didn't want it. So no one wanted it except for the obvious exception of Sanberg, who in the email The Athletic got said he was giving his own personal stock to Kawhi Leonard. That to me is confirmation that he is the guy who made Kawhi Leonard happen. The why is the question. We don't know. You think you know, but what you were missing is how the business side works. He had control of the BOD. He could tell anyone, board of directors, he could tell anyone what to do. If they disagreed, he could fire them, and he did. For all the information you have, why didn't any of the people you have talked to while they worked there uncover the fraud? Finance department couldn't balance their cash to the sales? No, because of the fraud. CFO and CLO allow letters of intent and don't see contracts showing how he was committing fraud, or see the statements that he sent to prospective investors inflating sales. It doesn't know what is happening with access to numbers and generation of statements. No, because Sanberg was a competent scammer just like Madoff. Madoff created fake increment docs. Sanberg created fake sales and cash docs. None of these people who you say were so close and knew that the cap was being violated had a clue about the fraud, but they knew about the salary cap. The information they got about the salary cap and Kawhi Leonard payments were right, but everything else they knew about the financials and what was happening in the company was wrong. If they knew, they would have turned them in, but it was a complete fraud. How do you square that circle? And of course, we have not seen a reply from Pablo Torre yet. There's a lot more to this. There's a lot more to this that I wasn't even able to get through. So, I mean, that basically, Mark Cuban is saying there that Sandberg's the one that wanted the Kawhi stuff. No one else did, but it doesn't matter because he's the scammer. He's the one in charge. He wanted it. He made it happen. Here, he is saying, Cuban, that Torre is not proving where Ballmer is directly funneling money into Kawhi. It's just, we know he's a fraud. Why are we acting like Ballmer is the one that's guilty and the fraud is just, he's just a fraud. We've accepted that and that's it. That there's not more to it. That's where Mark Cuban's questioning it. So again, I think the comments are all going to be, stop coping, dude. Like Mark Cuban's wrong. Torre's right, whatever. But it would be, I need to report what's happening, right? I'm just giving you the story. So if there was a lot to follow, let me know. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe on the road to 8,000 subscribers. We're going to have this whole thing covered for you right here. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.